Hey, welcome to episode 21 of the Ascendancy podcast. I'm Austin.
And I'm Chris.
On today's episode, we're going to be doing something a bit differently. We have some clips of some celebrity anti-vegans, and we're going to react to them. We'll do this maybe every couple of episodes and just have some more variation in our content here. I think it could be pretty entertaining to see how we respond to some of the more common arguments from people that a lot of non-vegans look up to. And to start off with, we're going to first respond to a clip of the esteemed astrophysics science communicator Neil deGrasse Tyson on an episode of Piers Morgan. He is widely regarded by non-vegans as a genius science communicator, so I'm sure he'll have some very profound and very intelligent takes on why humans should exploit and dominate animals. All right, and here's a clip loaded up here. He is on Piers Morgan, a British TV personality who also has great anti-vegan takes. Let's listen to what they have to say.
The steakhouse is playing sounds of cows being slaughtered. They're the ones that munch avocados and almonds, invariably.
Yeah, and by the way, and they are dining upon the reproductive organs of plants. That's
Yes.
kind of weird. And I imagine if a plant-based alien visited Earth, they would freak out when they saw vegetarians.
Yes.
Because the vegetarians would be eating them, right? And vegetarians target not only the reproductive organs, the nuts, the berries, the flowers, but they also target the infant versions of it. Lettuce, baby carrots, baby.
God.
This would terrify a plant-based alien. So that's just a cosmic perspective on that.
No,
diet.
you've given me.
All.
You have given me a whole new line of attack. The flower babies. I love it. This is fantastic. The ones who run into steakhouses playing.
So wow, that was something. Brilliant.
Yeah, that's some clip there, and what a clip to start off the series. I mean, you could see me just kind of like grinning the whole time. It's just a ridiculous video, and I've never seen such a silly, stupid line of reasoning put against veganism. Yeah, well, what are your initial thoughts, Austin, on that one?
I mean, I don't know if he's trolling, if he's serious. I've seen a few takes from him, and you can never tell because they're some of the most absurd. Just to start off, though, Piers Morgan is talking about how vegans eat avocados and almonds, so we're harming the bees, through doing this. First thing I want to say is that veganism is the ethical principle that humans shouldn't exploit animals. And there is, some animal exploitation in the practice he's talking about, except one thing that he forgot to mention is that it's actually the honey industry. So the honey industry uses any opportunity they can to gain, nectar, to produce honey. One of the ways they do that is through almonds and avocados, which is actually displacing the native bee populations. So if you want to avoid the exploitation of bees, it's not that you shouldn't consume avocados or almonds, but don't consume honey, which is something that vegans already advocate for, of course.
Yeah, that's really well said. And he's making a tu quoque fallacy, which is a translation to "you do it too." It's an appeal to hypocrisy. So the steelman, the claim he's making, he's trying to say that vegans are against like exploitation of animals, but the crops that they eat, they can involve the use of bees to pollinate the crops, and just that's a critique of the non-vegan food system that exists, of the non-vegan world that we live in. We don't live in the vegan world that vegans envision yet. It doesn't justify commodifying, enslaving, and slaughtering trillions of animals per year for food. It's a complete appeal to hypocrisy. Just because there could be some bee exploitation involved in crops, that doesn't at all justify being non-vegan, preying on billions of other animals just because the other solution is not perfect yet. It's completely backward, and it just doesn't make sense. And it would be akin to someone smoking a cigarette saying smoking is bad for you, don't do it, and then someone pointing at them and saying, well, you're smoking a cigarette right now. Like, that doesn't invalidate the claim that they're making. So yeah, we wanted to touch on this before we went into Neil's very intelligent line of reasoning after.
Yeah, absolutely. And You know, one of the funniest thing he says is that vegans are dining on the reproductive organs of plants. Like, what are you talking about exactly? Kiwis, mangoes, apples? These are the reproductive organs of plants, and he's trying to equate that to something like perverse. Meanwhile, the animals within animal agriculture are literally sexually violated. They literally consume the reproductive organs of these animals in hot dogs and hamburgers and sausages and what have you. But I would say that's far more perverse, especially all the violation where they actually commit sexual atrocities onto these animals to reproduce them to eat them. I would say that's a bit more weird than eating a mango, but hey, that's just me.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's trying to make it seem like disgusting or weird or predatory to be eating carrots or lettuce or apples. And like good luck, bud. Good luck convincing people that vegans are being perverse and predatory and weird by eating those foods. On the other hand, baby animals are sexually violated and killed all the time in agriculture, and you're directly funding that by being non-vegan. That is, you just see any video of a slaughterhouse just for a couple minutes. Most people are too cowardly to even look at that, and try to turn around and say vegans are weird for eating fruits and vegetables. And you look at what happens in the slaughterhouse. It's absolutely perverse. It's sickening. It's predatory. There's blood and guts all over the place. There's beings crying and screaming for their lives. And if you look at like a bunch of tomatoes in the supermarket aisle or some apples, I mean, come on, like it's just insanely stupid. That's why I was grinning ear to ear almost while I was reacting to this, because it's just so stupid. So, what do you think about his hypothetical plant-based alien visiting Earth? Amazing line of reasoning.
I mean, that was a truly brilliant one. I mean, if there were an alien who were to see us eating plants, and let's say it's a plant-based alien, I don't think they would care one bit. The reason why plants are not sentient, they don't think, they don't feel, they don't have a will to live. They react, to stimuli in a mechanistic way through chemical reactions where there's no neural processing involved. We understand these chemical reactions of how plants react to the sun or to various inputs. There's no subjective experience when a sunflower turns to the sun or what have you. Now, there is something that's actually far more analogous to the point that he's trying to make, and that is humans preying on and consuming animal-based life. We're an animal-based species, obviously. We're a sentient species preying on other sentient species. That is, much more common with the point that he's trying to articulate, but fails.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to pose two hypotheticals kind of in this related area that I think bring about a lot more introspective thought. So imagine a very powerful sentient alien species came to Earth, and just for the hypothetical, let's say that they were a vegan species. They had respect for all sentient life, and they cruised through the universe, trying to see if any species are doing any unjust acts, preying on their fellow beings. They would be absolutely appalled and aghast by what humans are doing to the other animals of this planet. We have this intelligence, this supposed evolved rationality, and yet we are preying on and killing trillions of innocent beings every year when they've done nothing wrong to us, and there's no nutrients from them that we need to be healthy or survive. They would just be absolutely appalled, and they would sentence us to like eternal prison for what we're doing to these animals. And another hypothetical that I think is a lot more interesting is, what if an alien species came to Earth and actually enslaved and exploited us the way that we enslave and exploit other animals? It wouldn't be so fun, right? Once you're in the victim's position, you would never want to be consumed and violated for someone else's taste, convenience, tradition, or habit. So whatever excuse you want to use to remain non-vegan, if somebody treated you the way you treat animals, you would not find it acceptable whatsoever. You would want your liberation right now. So really think about that and stop being a coward, stop being a hypocrite, and become vegan. So what do you think about that, Austin?
Well said. I mean, those are brilliant hypotheticals that really place us in that position. And I think they get the point across, as humans, we are in a complete power position. These animals, they can't escape. They have no means to, no capacity, no ability. They're purely innocent, purely vulnerable. I mean, I think it would take something like that for humans to realize, just having power over someone else doesn't actually justify doing anything we want to them. And we can see examples throughout human history too of people behaving the same way. They're in a position of majority or a position of power and preying on other humans. And we, for the most part, decent people agree that preying on others, massacring them just because they have less power or less numbers is a great moral wrong.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And before we move on to the next clip, I do want you to play the last portion of this clip where Piers was reacting to this highly intelligent argument. Let's listen to Piers here.
A cosmic perspective on that.
No,
diet.
you have given me a whole new line of attack. The flower babies. I love it. This is fantastic. The ones who
Just the dumb leading the dumb, right?
You got Dumb and Dumber here. Like, he's so inspired. His eyes are open to this brilliant new line of reasoning. Einstein could never have dreamed of such a incredibly intelligent take. And it's just befitting of Piers. I mean, he's just so dumb on this topic of veganism, just like most, TV personalities and intellectuals. Yeah. What do you think about that, Austin?
I remember when I went vegan at the end of 2016 and I first heard the plants feel pain excuse. It was almost like an inside joke among vegans. Like we would say, oh, plants feel pain too, Now it's like we have an astrophysics lecture going on national TV and proposing this bullshit, and then other idiots, other talking heads, oh, that's a good one, that's a new attack. It's like, how are people this stupid? It's mind blowing, really.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. Yeah, enough of this. We'll move on to the next clip here while Austin boots it up. So our next clip here is Ben Shapiro. He's a conservative political commentator, and he's going to be asked a few questions about veganism. One is from a little bit longer ago at one of these political events, and then it's going to transition to a more recent clip. So let's play it, Austin.
There was one question that you answered a little while ago. It's a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but just wanted to bring it back up because I thought that your answer was a little bit invalid. So basically, you were asked about the morality of killing animals for food, and you basically justified it by saying that killing animals is immoral because I think that human beings have a right to survive, and think that we need animal protein to survive as a general matter. I definitely agree that human beings have a right to survive, for sure. But
okay, so we're on the same page there. Okay,
but it's been pretty thoroughly debunked that humans require animal protein to thrive. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the largest organization of nutritional experts in the world, has basically said that basically a vegan diet is nutritionally adequate at all stages of life, and protein deficiencies are basically non-existent as long as you're eating enough calories. And there's also many vegan athletes that are very successful. So I didn't think that justification that you made was valid. So I was just wondering if you had any other.
I mean, I'm happy to look at the studies and determine whether I think you're right or not. I mean, again, I think that.
So I'm not assuming you.
Yeah, no. I'm listen.
I'm just saying, aside from that justification, was there anything?
I don't think that we should be killing animals or mistreating animals. But I think that the idea that a human being is the same as an animal is, and I know you're not saying that. But I'm saying that some of that undergirds some elements of sort of the vegan movement, which is that human beings and animals are of equal value, and therefore you can't kill an animal for food. So if the argument is that you don't have a need base for food, then maybe that's true. And if that's the case, then I would actually, I've said before, I think that there's some pretty good arguments for vegetarianism or veganism.
Yeah, it's just the fact that we have readily available alternatives that we
right. So that I think is the best argument for veganism. I think the worst argument for veganism is sort of the PETA argument, the sort of the Holocaust on your plate nonsense. But I do. Again, I think that if we're needlessly killing animals, then I would consider moving away from that.
So the first point that Ben made that I disagreed with, I was shaking my head, is when Ben is suggesting that, some component of veganism is the belief that you must think that humans and non-human animals, you must value their lives completely the same. In other words, the life of a 20-year-old is the same as, a bunny or a cow you see, and that's just not true. As we defined earlier, veganism is the principle that humans shouldn't exploit animals. There's no entailment of that principle that says you must think that a human's moral worth is here, and then a cow's moral worth is here. It's the same. There's no entailment that you need to think that. And there are some vegans who do think that, and some vegans who don't think that. And it's really pointless thinking about that kind of hypothetical, because we're never in a life or death situation where you have to choose. I won't say never, but pretty often, pretty rarely, you'll have to choose between like saving a human versus like saving a cat or a dog or a cow. Like we're never in that situation. It's just the recognition that as the sentient beings they have an individual subjective experience. They do not wish to be enslaved, subjugated, exploited, have their babies stolen from them, to be killed at a fraction of their lifespan. As long as you recognize they have that very important interest, you can just choose to have something else on the dinner table, or choose to buy different things for your wardrobe, avoiding leather and fur, and going to different places to entertain yourself besides circuses and zoos. There's no entailment that you have to think a human's life is absolutely the same value as a non-human animal's life. What do you think about that, Austin?
Absolutely. I don't know if he was strawmanning us intentionally or that was just his perspective on what veganism is, but we don't necessarily hold the value that humans or animals are equal, or that any two beings are equal. I mean, equality in terms of like the way that it's presented here is subjective. We think that all beings are equal in one capacity, and that's sentience. So because animals are sentient and they have a will, we don't have any justifiable basis to violate their will and prey on them, but not other sentient beings. And that's really the core of our argument. And then he says, oh, well, there's alternatives. So because there's alternatives, that could be a better argument, but that's not actually our argument. Our argument is that we shouldn't prey on animals because we have alternatives. Alternatives just make it easier to not prey on animals. He talks about protein, that's just an extremely debunked health excuse, and health excuses don't invalidate veganism, by the way. Like, let's say hypothetically humans are obligate carnivores, something like that. As moral agents, as technically advanced moral agents, we would then just have the moral obligation to create technologies that solve that problem. And that seems to be what Ben Shapiro thinks, but we really genuinely don't need to consume animal proteins to begin with. And if hypothetically we did, that would just make creating these alternatives a moral obligation, not a moral virtue.
Yeah, that's really well said. And one talking point that you'll hear Ben make throughout this clip, because we're not done quite yet, is he suggests that if there are these alternative sources of nutrition, then yeah, I should make that change to become vegan. And it's like, I want to shake him and be like, dude, those alternatives exist, and even if they don't, you can eat the basic grocery staples like rice, beans, potatoes, vegetables, spices, nuts, seeds, and get all the nutrients you need. Take one B12 supplement once a week and you're good to go. Like, we live in this world now. You do not need to be consuming animals for your nutrition. And like you said, Austin, even if we did, it would just necessitate scientific innovation to create types of foods that do not involve the exploitation of sentient beings to fulfill our nutrient needs. But it's so annoying when people are just stuck on that point where they're like, well, if there is the feasibility of a plant-based diet, then like I absolutely would move in that direction. It's like, my guy, we already live in that world and you're still not vegan. Like, wake up.
Exactly.
Past few years, I've heard you repeat.
Quick point here. Veganism has nothing to do with the taste or texture of food. No one became vegan because they dislike the taste or texture of animal products. That said, there already are alternatives, as Chris was saying, to things like hamburgers, so you can be vegan and also not miss hamburgers by eating vegan hamburgers.
Vividly predict that in 100 years, all of us are going to be looked back upon as barbarians, and I'm quoting you, barbarians, for eating animals, for eating meat.
I said it's a possibility, yeah.
You've predicted it on 3 separate occasions.
I said probably, and I think that's probably true, yeah.
Okay, so
Sure.
you stand by that
Yep.
statement. Okay, great. And yet you've never suggested that you would take any action on this topic. You've never suggested that you are going to go vegan or even vegetarian. I know. And so my question for you is this. How can you make a career off of preaching personal responsibility while failing to take responsibility for your words on this topic?
So one of the contingencies that would make it an absolute brutality in 100 years is that there's actual sources of animal-like protein that are produced without the use of animals, and that is progressing pretty quickly, right? I mean, you're actually seeing animal protein being produced without the killing of animals.
Already exists. It's called plant-based protein. Things like seitan, soy, tempeh, they have a complete amino acid profile. They give you every amino acid you need. If you eat enough calories to survive, you're going to get enough protein. There's nothing intrinsic to animal corpses that give you nutrients you can't get from plant-based foods or supplements in the case of B12.
I think that's going to make things a lot easier for people. As far as the vegetarian vegan question, it's something that I've actually seriously considered. I haven't talked about it publicly a lot, but it's something that I've actually pretty seriously considered because, I mean, frankly, I do think that there are I think that on the list of moral evils in American society, I think that this comes in a far, far cry behind things like abortion, for example, like the killing of human beings in the womb. But if you're going to talk about, but if rightly so, you say, okay, well, make your
Yeah, you saw me shaking my head there, and it's completely ridiculous to say that abortions are a worse moral evil than the slaughter and exploitation of billions of beings a year. So I did some research, and there's about a million abortions per year in the U.S. Meanwhile, we kill billions upon billions of animals for food, for clothing, and for entertainment, but most of them are killed for food, obviously. And these are fully developed, sentient, conscious beings with a experience in the world. They are much more developed than a human fetus, although there is life there, especially later in pregnancy. It's just ridiculous. And then if you go on a global scale, I did some research, and it seemed like there are about 73 million abortions worldwide. But on a global scale, we are killing trillions of animals for food and some amount as well for clothing, entertainment. And it's just a ridiculous statement. Objectively speaking, there's more suffering, there's more violence, there's more violations occurring in agriculture than in abortions. So this is just that theistic, humans are at the top of the hill, worshiping at the altar of humans, that humans are so much more special than everyone else, that anything done to them is so much more wrong than what is done to the non-humans of this planet. It's completely ridiculous. It's devoid of any logic. It's just based in religious doctrine that humans are so much more special and so important. And if you look at it objectively, look at the numbers, and you look at the eyes of the animals as they're heading into the slaughterhouse floor, and you multiply that by billions upon trillions of animals, it's just a completely false claim.
Well said. What Ben Shapiro did is called whataboutism and playing to the crowd. Like, he just threw this in to deflect and say, oh, there's a bigger issue. And you can say this, when it comes to anything that you care about or you're passionate about, just trying to sidestep the argument and say, well, what about this? What about that? What about abortion? You can be against multiple different injustices. No one says you can't be pro-life and vegan. I am personally, but I'm not going to say, hey, we shouldn't talk about this mass exploitation and slaughter of animals because of another separate issue. We can talk about multiple things at multiple times. I would say right now animals are the greatest victims on the planet by quantity killed, the degree of injustices inflicted on them, and you have 99% of humans on Earth, obsessing on human issues all the time, 24/7. Now it's one of the very rare times in Ben Shapiro's life, is being confronted with this topic of animal exploitation, and he's just sort of playing the crowd there, knowing he's going to say something that's going to resonate with them and get some applause. And then everyone in the crowd can feel like validated, like, oh yeah, well, we care about this issue. This is more important than this vegan thing, so why are we going to focus on this? And that's exactly what he was doing. That's what his objective was of even mentioning that. And you can see this type of a thing among people of any sort of background. Like if you had a left-wing speaker here, they could have said the exact same thing. What about the pro-choice? What about women not being able to get abortions? That's a much bigger issue than this veganism thing. So that's exactly what he was doing, is just playing the crowd.
Yeah, that's a good point. And before we move on to the last part of the clip, I do want to pose name the trait, because it's a really powerful, thought experiment, if you will, that really exposes the discriminatory, foundations of non-veganism. So, whether you're pro-choice, pro-life, or whatever political spectrum you're on, everyone has this double standard where humans are to be valued and respected, animals are not. So to anyone who's pro-life, who might be watching this, who might agree with Ben Shapiro, I would pose you this question. So what is true of a human fetus that makes their life so much more deserving of consideration and respect than a non-human animal's life? Like, what is the specific trait that makes it okay to be so concerned for them and to not be concerned about non-human animals? These are fully sentient beings. They are out of their parents' womb. They exist in the earth. They have a subjective experience. They do not wish to suffer. They do not wish to die. Like, what is actually the concrete trait or set of traits that justifies that discrimination? And I've yet to hear a logically sound response to this argument, and I think it's a very powerful argument to influence people to understand veganism. And it just comes down to the fact that people have this innate bias in preference of humans, and they just disregard the animals. But what is actually true of one that's not true of the other, that justifies this kind of discrimination?
Absolutely, well said. And that's really what the argument comes out to, is what is a tangible difference between humans and animals that justifies violating the animals and not humans? And people can say many different things. They can say rationality, intellect, ability, things of this nature. But every time a person does that, you will put humans in the same position, whether they be a fetus, an infant, a toddler, a disabled person. You end up putting people in the same position when you name any trait. And when you get to it, the reason why is because there is one trait that dictates the morality of how you interact with others, and that's sentience. And sentience and everything that comes from sentience, like the will to live, etc., but chiefly it's sentience, the ability to have a subjective experience. And when it comes to this abortion argument, whether someone is pro-life or pro-choice, I find, the irony in this is that both of their arguments implicitly should be pro-vegan. With the pro-choice crowd, they say, you're talking about violating the autonomy, and funny enough, they never talk about violating, the fetus in question here, who didn't choose to be within, the mother, who ultimately gets killed in the pursuit of sensual pleasure, etc. Why isn't the autonomy of any of these beings that people prey on respected? And same thing with pro-life. You're pro-life, but when it comes to every other species, you're pro-death, pro-domination, pro-enslavement. That's just completely inconsistent. And the rationale, too, I am not religious, but the rationale of most religious people is that they're pro-life because a human is God's creation. So it's respect one of God's creation, but destroy and dominate and oppress every other being that your God created, which really is humans killing God himself. Humans killing God's creation, as Gary Yourofsky put it.
Right. Yeah, those are great points. And like you said, veganism, it's compatible with the pro-choice platform or the pro-life platform. Either way, no matter which way you slice it. So You know, I know vegans who are pro-choice. I know vegans who are pro-life, and no matter like how you slice it, if you're pro-choice when it comes to being non-vegan and demanding animals to be exploited and violated to death, it's like, so it's their body, your choice. Your choice gets to decide whether they live a fulfilled life or die a horrible death at a very young age. And even if it's not a gruesome, horrible death, like they're just killed in their sleep or something, it's still a violation. It's still wrong. And then like we described here with the pro-life side, like you're pro-life for humans, but not for all the other animals. You know, why are you selectively invoking God's name to justify this act of exploitation toward animals? You know, the God that you worship, he created animals too. He loves animals as well. Why are you so happy to destroy them and to invoke his name to justify it? It's the oldest excuse in the book. And yeah, I think we touched on this well. Let's wrap up this clip here.
All right, on the last segment.
Eating habits adhere to a more moral standard. It's something I'll admit I'm a hypocrite on, and it's something that I've thought about a fair bit. So actually, thank you for urging me to consider my hypocrisy and continuing to move in that direction, because I'm thinking about it seriously.
Admit that you're a hypocrite and then continue to add, how can you?
That's what a hypocrite is. I just said I am.
But you're
I mean,
preaching personal responsibility. So what if I said that I was a hypocrite on the pro-life issue? That you say, what if I say, well, I think abortion is wrong, but I'm going to get an
Right,
abortion. Obviously, I can't.
I'd be saying at least you're. What I would say is you're upholding the right moral standard in your talk, and I wish you would do so in your personal life. And you are free to say the same thing to me about my eating habits.
So he was being completely disingenuous in that last segment. And the reason why is he's looking to dodge accountability. He's trying to extend an olive branch there and say, hey, look, you know, we can agree to disagree, basically. But does he really genuinely believe that? Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a good point there. And like you said earlier in the video, he said that abortion is such a serious moral evil. If somebody was saying, well, I'm a hypocrite, like I think we should respect life, but I'm still going to get an abortion, I agree, Austin. He would be a lot more harsh on that person. He wouldn't just be like, well, I wish you would align your actions more with your values, but, you know, at least you're honest. Like, no, I really think, you know, Ben, if you have these strong moral views, you would not be as soft on that person. I think that's a disingenuous, you know, thing that you said there at the end. And he's just trying to go soft on that guy so that he can't be harsh on Ben. He's trying to be like, well, you know, I would say you're a hypocrite, and you know, if I'm saying that, then you can say that towards me, and like, oh well, you know, I wish I could do better. It's like, no, it's not okay to just be a hypocrite. Like, you should align your actions with your values as best as you can and evolve to become a better person. You can't just relax in the laziness of just saying, well, there's inconsistency there, but I'm just like, I'm too lazy. It's like when it comes to moral evils and participating in moral evil, when we're faced with new information, we need to evolve beyond that and change and become better people. You can't just bask in that hypocrisy and just be like, well, you know, like it's just how it is, and it's just silly. And another point I want to make is, you know, I've been throughout the episode of saying like how he wants to move toward veganism, or he's been thinking a lot about it. And to this day, as far as I understand, Ben is still not vegan. So it just shows like in the moment when he's in front of the crowd, he just wants to say the right thing or say the thing that looks the best. But in his own life, he's not actually doing anything with his behaviors. He's still sponsored by animal exploitation companies, you know, sponsored by big meat in his videos and stuff. So it's just completely dishonest.
Absolutely, well said. And you can't preach personal responsibility while admitting you're a hypocrite. If we don't align our actions with our ideals, we are being a poor moral agent, and we don't have, you know, any room to stand on when we talk about condemning others for their actions while being a knowing hypocrite. You know, it's one thing to live in ignorance, it's another one to knowingly commit an act of injustice or evil while even acknowledging that you're a hypocrite and still doing it. So if you are someone who takes responsibility for your actions, if you're going to find those instances in life where you are a hypocrite or you are misinformed, and you're going to correct those with action, you know, not just talk.
Yeah, well said. So I think that wraps up this first reaction episode. There was a mix of entertainment and a mix of more serious content. So I appreciate you guys for watching. We'll probably do these every couple episodes, like Austin mentioned earlier on. So thank you for watching, and peace out.